Welcome to our deep dive. We're going to be looking at something I think is really cool. We're going to be talking about how to use military strategy to kind of navigate everyday life.
Ooh.
And for this one, we're going to be drawing a lot from Robert Greene's talk at Microsoft,
Okay.
which is based on his book, The 33 Strategies of War.
Interesting.
And, it's kind of crazy to think about this knowledge that was once like top secret, whispered in like the halls of power is something that now we get to unlock for ourselves.
Yeah, and it really is remarkable how this information was kind of guarded and kept secret for so long.
Right.
If you look back through history, military strategy was really something that was studied almost exclusively by elite groups, kings and generals and their inner circles and
like they had all the keys to power and they just kept them in a little vault.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like having this powerful playbook for handling conflict and achieving your goals. But it's like hidden away,
right.
in a vault somewhere.
It makes you wonder, like, who controls information
Right.
and how that really shapes our world,
Absolutely.
Speaking of control, I came across this really fascinating story from the Haitian Revolution.
Oh.
And basically, during their fight for freedom against Napoleon's army and enslaved Haitians, got their hands on military strategy manuals that their former French masters had left behind.
Mm-hmm.
And, they used that knowledge to strategize their rebellion.
Wow.
And, eventually they achieved this incredible victory.
That's amazing.
The first army to defeat Napoleon, actually.
You didn't know that.
It's really crazy to think about that.
That's amazing. What a perfect illustration of how access to that strategic thinking can just change everything, really. Even though we live in a modern world now.
Yeah.
So much of what those early strategists, figured out is still incredibly relevant today.
Yeah, but it is interesting, though, isn't it? Nowadays, there's almost a hesitation to use these ideas in, civilized settings.
Right.
Like, to apply them at the office almost feels like wrong.
I get that.
Yeah.
But it's important to remember that military strategy isn't necessarily about being aggressive or starting wars,
I see what you mean.
If you look at Sun Tzu, who wrote The Art of War, he actually defined it as achieving victory with the least amount of violence possible.
Interesting.
So it's not about aggression. It's really about resolving conflict effectively and strategically.
I like that. So instead of picturing like an army charging into battle, we should be thinking more like a chess game.
Exactly.
Where, you're trying to outmaneuver your opponent using strategy and careful planning.
Yeah, think of it as this mental game.
Right.
Where you're using your understanding of, human nature and these strategic principles to solve problems, whether it's in your personal life, at work, even in society as a whole.
I think so many of us get stuck in this cycle of just reacting to whatever life throws at us,
Right.
The deadlines, the emails, the sudden problems.
Yep.
And we're constantly just putting out fires.
Putting out fires, yeah.
It's exhausting.
It's exactly what Greene calls being trapped in tactical hell.
Tactical hell.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
This feeling of, constantly reacting to the latest emergency without ever stepping back to consider the bigger picture.
Yeah. So how do we get out of that? How do we get to this strategic heaven? What's the key to breaking out of that cycle of just reacting all the time?
Well, the key is understanding the difference between tactics and strategy.
Okay.
So tactics are about handling that immediate problem.
Right.
The fire that you need to put out right now.
Got it.
Strategy is about looking beyond that immediate crisis and developing a long-term plan to achieve your goals.
So tactics are like using a fire extinguisher.
Yeah, I like that.
And then strategy is like designing a fireproof building.
That's a great analogy.
Okay.
Yeah, because with strategy, you're thinking about how to prevent those fires from happening in the first place.
Right.
Or at least how to be better prepared to handle them when they do.
I think sometimes people shy away from strategy because it sounds really complex,
Right.
Like it's something that only generals and CEOs need to worry about.
Yeah, that's a common misconception.
Right.
But the core principles of strategy are actually very adaptable.
Okay.
And anyone can learn to use them. To understand this better, let's look at the legendary Japanese samurai Miyamoto Musashi.
Okay.
Who really embodied a key principle of strategy.
Musashi. That's the samurai who fought with two swords, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Total badass.
He was.
Yeah.
And he was also a brilliant strategist.
Cool.
He lived by this principle of do not fight the last war.
Okay.
So what that means is he never relied on just brute force
Right.
or the same tactics every time.
Okay.
He was known for his adaptability, his ability to analyze his opponents,
Interesting.
identify their weaknesses, and then adjust his approach accordingly.
So instead of sticking to like a rigid plan,
Exactly.
he was kind of flexible and creative in how he approached each battle.
Exactly.
at hand.
And this idea of do not fight the last war is relevant for us today. You know, it's about being willing to ditch the old formulas,
Right.
to adapt to new situations, and use your own strengths to exploit your opponent's weaknesses.
So it's not about becoming a samurai warrior, literally,
No.
but it's thinking like, one,
Right.
being adaptable, resourceful, and figuring out like, the best approach for each specific challenge.
Right.
That's pretty empowering, actually.
It is.
Because it means that we can all kind of become strategic thinkers, regardless of,
Absolutely.
our background.
Yeah, and that leads us to this idea of grand strategy,
Okay.
which takes us beyond, just winning individual battles
Okay.
to achieving larger long-term goals.
Grand strategy sounds pretty epic.
It is.
Where did this idea come from?
Well, the ancient Greeks
Okay.
had a strong understanding of grand strategy, particularly as embodied by the goddess Athena.
Athena, goddess of wisdom, strategic thinking.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like those statues of her with the owl, always just looking so cool and wise.
Exactly. Think of Athena as this wise owl,
Right.
perched high above the battlefield,
Right.
seeing everything with perfect clarity.
Okay.
And that's the essence of grand strategy.
Okay.
Stepping back from that immediate conflict
Right.
to gain a wider perspective.
So it's more than just zooming out.
It is.
Okay.
It is. It's about analyzing the historical context,
Right.
thinking about the potential consequences of your actions,
Yeah.
considering the political and social factors involved, and even trying to see the situation from your opponent's point of view.
That's a lot to consider.
It is.
But I can see how powerful that would be. Do you have any real life examples of someone who really nailed this whole grand strategy approach?
Well, one of the most famous examples of grand strategy is Alexander the Great.
Alexander the Great, the guy who conquered most of the known world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Most people imagine him just leading these dramatic charges into battle.
Right.
But his victories were actually the result of years of careful planning
Right.
and strategic maneuvering.
Okay.
He didn't just rely on military force. He spent years cultivating political alliances
Wow.
and weakening the Persian Empire from within before he engaged in any major battles.
Wow. So he was playing the long game,
Exactly.
setting himself up for success long before the actual conflict even began.
Exactly.
Wow. He was a master of strategic patience.
He was.
Yeah.
He understood that sometimes the best move is to wait, to prepare,
Right.
and to strike only when you have a clear advantage.
I think a lot of us could learn from that. We tend to get caught up in reacting to the latest problem
Right.
instead of stepping back and thinking about how our actions today
Yeah.
could really shape our future,
That's the power of grand strategy.
Right?
It encourages us to think long-term, to consider the ripple effects of our choices,
Right.
and to act with a sense of purpose that goes beyond just reacting to the moment.
All right. So we've gone from tactical hell to strategic heaven,
Right.
and now we're talking grand strategy.
Yeah,
It sounds like we're building quite the strategic framework here.
we are.
Can we see these principles in play in something like the Iraq War?
The Iraq War. Yeah,
Obviously, this is a sensitive topic,
of course.
but I think it's important to kind of examine it through this strategic lens.
Yeah, absolutely.
Greene touches on this a bit in his talk, right?
He does.
Yeah.
And it's crucial that we approach this with sensitivity and nuance.
Absolutely. Just to be clear to our listeners, we're not trying to take sides here or judge anyone's decisions. We're just trying to explore how these strategic principles can help us to understand these complex situations.
Absolutely.
So, from a strategic perspective, it's interesting to look at the various factors that might have been at play,
Yeah.
during the lead up to the war, including like personal motivations,
Right.
the emotional climate after 9/11,
Yeah.
and maybe even a bit of wishful thinking.
I think it's safe to say that emotions were running very high
Right.
after 9/11.
Yeah.
And there was this powerful urge to take action,
Right.
to prevent another attack.
Yeah, and Greene suggests that George W. Bush's desire to kind of differentiate himself from his father,
Interesting.
who was, criticized for not removing Saddam Hussein from power, might have also been a factor,
Yeah, yeah.
So these personal and emotional elements,
Right.
combined with the post-9/11 atmosphere, could have created a certain bias,
Absolutely.
in the decision-making process.
Yeah, it's a reminder that none of us are immune to our emotions.
Right.
They can cloud our judgment,
Yeah.
even when we think we're being completely rational.
That's a sobering thought.
It is.
Even with the best of intentions,
Yeah.
our emotions can really lead us down a path
Absolutely.
that might not be strategically sound.
That's why military strategy stresses the importance of detaching your emotions
Right.
from the decision-making process,
Yep.
becoming aware of your own biases
Yeah.
and carefully considering all possible outcomes,
Right.
including potential unintended consequences.
It's like taking a deep breath,
Yeah.
calming your emotions,
Yeah.
and then trying to just look at the situation as objectively as possible.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Not always easy,
Right.
but really important for making good strategic decisions.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
We've talked about, the historical secrecy surrounding military strategy.
Yeah.
We've explored the key differences between tactics and grand strategy.
Right.
And we've even looked at how emotions can impact decisions on a global scale.
Yeah.
So what are the most important takeaways from all of this? Like, what can we actually apply to our own lives?
I think one of Greene's most powerful messages is that anyone can learn and benefit from these principles.
So it's not just for generals and world leaders.
Exactly.
It's for all of us.
It's for all of us.
Yeah.
Whether you're facing a difficult negotiation at work, a creative challenge, or just trying to figure out how to get out of tactical hell
Right.
and create a more strategic life. These principles can be incredibly helpful.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that every interaction,
Right.
every challenge can be approached strategically.
Doesn't it feel a little, intense to apply the art of war to something like a work project?
Right?
Like, I don't want to start thinking of my colleagues as enemies.
I understand that concern, but it's all about context.
Right.
The principles themselves are adaptable,
Right.
And how you apply them will depend on the situation.
Okay.
It's not about being manipulative or ruthless.
Okay, good.
It's about understanding those underlying principles
Right.
of strategy
Right.
and then adapting them to your own unique environment.
So it's like having a toolbox
Yeah.
full of different strategies.
Yeah.
And you choose the right one for the job.
Precisely.
Okay.
You wouldn't use a sledgehammer to hang a picture.
Right.
One strategy that really stood out to me from Greene's talk is this idea of choosing your battles carefully.
So sometimes the most strategic move is not to engage at all.
Exactly.
Okay.
Not every fight is worth fighting.
Right.
Sometimes it's more strategic to conserve your energy.
Right.
Pick your moments carefully
Okay.
and only engage when it's truly advantageous to do so.
Yeah, I've always heard the saying, pick your battles.
Yeah.
But now I'm seeing it through this,
Right.
whole new strategic lens.
Exactly.
It's not just about avoiding conflict. It's about being deliberate.
Yeah.
Right.
About when and where you choose to expend your energy.
It's about recognizing that sometimes the most powerful move is to step back,
Okay.
assess the situation,
Right.
and only engage when you have a clear strategic advantage.
How do you determine, which battles are worth fighting? What constitutes that strategic advantage?
That's where your understanding of grand strategy comes in.
Okay.
You need to analyze the situation,
Okay.
taking into account all the relevant factors,
Right.
and then determine if engaging in this particular battle will ultimately move you closer to your overall goals.
So it's not just about winning that immediate fight,
Right.
but it's about how that fight fits into, your long-term strategy.
Exactly.
Like playing chess. Sometimes you have to
It's-
sacrifice a pawn
Yeah.
to gain control of the board
That's a great analogy.
and then win the game.
Yeah.
But life isn't always as neat and predictable as a chessboard.
Right.
So how do we apply these principles in the real world?
Where things are often messy and unpredictable.
That's where adaptability comes in.
Okay.
Think back to Miyamoto Musashi.
Yeah.
He was known for constantly adapting his strategy
Right.
to the situation,
Right.
the environment,
Okay.
his opponent.
Yeah, he never thought the same way twice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's not about following a set of rigid rules.
Right.
It's about being flexible, creative,
Mhm.
and knowing how to adjust your approach based on the circumstances.
So we're not trying to become mini Napoleons marching around and
Right.
barking orders.
It's about cultivating a strategic mindset
Right.
that empowers you to make better decisions,
Okay.
to navigate challenges effectively,
Right.
and achieve your goals, with,
Yeah.
as Sun Tzu would say, minimal bloodshed.
Minimal bloodshed definitely sounds like a good strategy for life.
Absolutely.
Um, did Greene offer any specific advice on how we can actually start to develop this strategic mindset? It feels a bit overwhelming to know where to begin.
One of his key recommendations is to cultivate self-awareness.
Self-awareness, that sounds more like therapy than military strategy.
Right, but think about it.
Okay.
If you're not aware of your own strengths and weaknesses,
Right.
your biases,
Okay.
your emotional triggers,
Yeah.
how can you strategize effectively?
It's like trying to navigate a maze in the dark without even knowing where you're starting from.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Self-awareness is the foundation of strategic thinking.
Right.
It's about understanding your own tendencies,
Okay.
your patterns of behavior,
Yeah.
and how your emotions might be influencing your decisions.
So before we can outmaneuver our opponents, we have to understand ourselves first.
Precisely, yeah.
Okay.
You need to be honest with yourself,
Okay.
acknowledge your limitations,
Right.
and recognize how your own biases might be coloring your perceptions.
This is starting to click for me.
Good.
It's not about memorizing battle tactics,
Right.
but it's about developing this deeper understanding
Right.
of ourselves and how we operate in the world.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
And once you have that foundation of self-awareness,
Right.
you can begin to apply those strategic principles
Okay.
more consciously and effectively.
It's like upgrading your internal operating system so you can run the strategic software more smoothly.
I like that analogy.
Okay, cool.
It really highlights how that self-awareness is like an essential upgrade for that strategic thinking.
So how can we become more self-aware? Did Greene offer any practical tips?
He recommended journaling as a tool for self-reflection.
Journaling. I wasn't expecting that.
Right.
I thought maybe he'd suggest like meditation or something.
But journaling is a powerful tool for self-discovery.
Right.
It's about taking some time each day
Okay.
to write down your thoughts,
Okay.
your feelings, your observations,
Yeah.
reflect on your interactions,
Right.
the challenges that you face,
Okay.
the successes that you achieved.
So it's like taking a strategic inventory of your day.
Exactly.
Okay.
By writing down your experiences.
Ah.
You create a record that allows you to step back
Right.
and analyze your behavior patterns,
Okay.
your emotional triggers,
Yeah.
and any ways in which you might be self-sabotaging
Right.
or limiting your strategic options.
It's so smart.
It is.
It's like having a strategic replay of your day so you can see what worked, what didn't,
Exactly.
and where you can improve.
Yeah, and the more you practice this kind of self-reflection,
Right.
the more self-aware you become,
Okay.
which then allows you to apply these strategic principles
Right.
with greater clarity and intention.
I'm really liking this whole strategic journaling thing.
Good.
It sounds simple but powerful.
It is.
Yeah. And I guess self-awareness is an ongoing process.
It is.
Right. It's not a destination.
Yeah.
It's something you develop over time
Right.
through consistent practice and
And reflection.
reflection. We talked about self-awareness and journaling.
Yeah.
Are there any other techniques that Greene recommends for developing strategic thinking?
He emphasizes the importance of studying history.
History. I can already hear some listeners turning off the podcast right now, being like, what does ancient history have to do with my life today?
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
But Greene argues that history is a treasure trove of strategic wisdom.
Okay.
By studying the past, particularly the lives and decisions of great strategists,
Right.
we can gain incredible insights into human behavior, power dynamics,
Right.
and the timeless principles of strategy.
So it's like learning from the masters.
Exactly.
Okay.
History is filled with case studies,
Right.
both successes and failures,
Right.
that offer invaluable lessons about strategy.
It's like having a backstage pass
Yeah.
to some of the greatest strategic minds of all time.
It is.
I'm starting to see how history can be more than just
Yeah.
memorizing dates and battles.
Wow.
It's like a strategic simulator
Exactly.
that allows us to learn from the mistakes and the triumphs of those who came before us.
Exactly. And remember, as the saying goes, history doesn't repeat itself,
Right.
but it often rhymes.
I love that
Yeah.
by studying history, we can start to recognize those strategic rhymes, those
Exactly.
patterns of behavior that have played out, throughout human history.
Throughout history.
That can give us a real edge, I think,
Absolutely.
in our own strategic decision making.
Exactly. It's about developing that historical perspective
Right.
that lets you see beyond your immediate situation
Right.
and understand those larger forces at play.
Are there any particular historical figures or events that Greene suggests that we study?
He points to Queen Elizabeth I
Queen Elizabeth I.
as a prime example of a brilliant strategist.
She's an icon, but I never really thought of her as like a strategic mastermind.
Right. Well, she was incredibly skilled
Right.
at navigating these incredibly complex political and social landscapes,
Right.
maintaining her power in a male-dominated world
Right.
and leading England through a period of extraordinary change and growth.
Yeah. Her reign lasted for over 40 years
It did.
during a time of like major upheaval. So that's a pretty impressive track record.
She achieved this by mastering the arts of, strategic maneuvering,
Right.
calculated risk-taking,
Right.
and understanding the psychology of her opponents.
What were some of her most effective strategic moves?
One of her go-to strategies was the use of delaying tactics.
Okay.
She understood that sometimes the most strategic move is to wait,
Right.
to gather information,
Okay.
and to let your opponents wear themselves out with their own impatience.
It's like strategically playing possum.
You could say that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's about recognizing that sometimes inaction can be more powerful than action.
I can see how that would be useful in like a high stakes negotiation,
Absolutely.
Sometimes the best thing to do is just sit back
Right.
and let the other side reveal their hand.
Exactly. And Queen Elizabeth was also brilliant at using her femininity to her advantage.
Okay.
In a world that often underestimated women, she used her charm, her wit,
Right.
and a certain strategic ambiguity to keep her opponents off balance.
So she turned what could have been perceived as a weakness into a strategic asset.
Exactly.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
I love that. Like, she played the game on her own terms.
It's a great reminder that strategy is about leveraging all of your resources,
Right.
even those that might seem unconventional.
This is all so inspiring.
Yeah.
I feel ready to channel my inner Queen Elizabeth and
There you go.
conquer the world.
Remember, you don't need to be royalty to be a strategic thinker.
Right.
These principles are applicable
Right.
to any situation, any challenge,
Yeah.
any goal you set for yourself.
So we've talked about self-awareness, historical wisdom,
Yeah.
strategic maneuvering.
Right.
What other nuggets of strategic wisdom did we...
Well, in today's world
Yeah.
where we're constantly bombarded with information,
Right.
he stresses the importance of filtering out the noise.
Filtering out the noise. That sounds more like a social media strategy
Right.
than a military tactic.
But think about it.
Okay.
In the age of information overload, it's hard to separate what's truly important from
Yeah.
all the distraction,
Right.
all the opinions, the conflicting data.
Yeah. Yeah. It can be totally overwhelming.
Absolutely. It's like trying to have a conversation in a room where everyone is shouting at the same time.
Right. Exactly.
And that's where strategic filtering comes in.
Okay. So how do we become strategic noise-canceling experts?
Well, it's about developing a critical eye,
Okay.
questioning your sources,
Right.
and learning to distinguish what's truly valuable
Right.
from what's simply distracting or misleading.
So we need to be like strategic fact checkers.
You could say that.
Okay.
Yeah. It's about being more discerning with the information that you consume,
Right.
considering the source and evaluating different perspectives
Right.
before forming your own opinions.
But when everyone have an opinion and everyone is broadcasting it,
Right.
how do we know who to trust?
Well, this is where critical thinking comes in.
Okay.
It's about questioning assumptions,
Okay.
looking for evidence,
Right. Yeah.
and considering multiple viewpoints
Right.
before forming your own conclusions.
So it's not about blindly accepting what we see or hear,
Exactly.
but it's about engaging with information actively,
Yeah.
evaluating it,
Yeah.
and then forming our own informed opinions.
Exactly.
I love that we're becoming like information warriors,
There you go.
fighting against misinformation and armed with critical thinking skills.
And remember, filtering out the noise is an ongoing process,
Right.
especially in our hyper-connected world.
Yeah.
You have to be vigilant
Right.
and consistently practice these skills.
It's like a mental muscle that needs to be
Exactly.
exercised regularly. And
Exactly.
the more you use it, the stronger it gets.
The more you practice that critical thinking. And that strategic filtering the better you'll become at identifying what's truly important
Okay.
and making sound decisions based on reliable information.
Wow, we've added another powerful tool
We have.
to our strategic toolbox.
And remember, you don't need to be a superhero
Right.
to be a strategic thinker.
Right,
You simply need to cultivate the right mindset
right.
and use the tools and techniques that resonate with you.
So we've explored self-awareness, historical wisdom,
Yeah.
strategic maneuvering, information filtering.
Right.
What other insights did Greene share in his talk?
He emphasized a concept that I think beautifully ties everything together.
Okay.
And that's the importance of embracing a mindset of constant learning.
Constant learning, that sounds more like a graduation speech than a military strategy.
Right. But it's crucial.
Okay.
The world is constantly evolving.
Right.
And if we're not growing our thinking,
Right.
adapting our strategies,
Yeah.
and continuously learning new things,
Yeah.
we'll quickly fall behind.
It's like that saying, adapt or die.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
In the world of strategy, there is no finish line.
Okay.
It's a continuous journey
Right.
of growth, learning, and adaptation.
So we're all lifelong students of strategy.
Precisely. And that's an exciting prospect.
It is, yeah.
It means there are always opportunities
Right.
to grow, refine your thinking, and approach challenges with fresh perspectives.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's so important to keep that strategic fire burning.
It is.
You know, how do we make sure we're constantly evolving and not getting stuck in
Right.
old patterns?
Well, Greene recommends cultivating what he calls a beginner's mind.
Beginner's mind. Okay.
Yeah.
That's intriguing.
It's about approaching every situation,
Okay.
every challenge, with a sense of curiosity,
Okay.
openness,
Right.
and a willingness to learn something new,
Right.
even if you think you're an expert.
So it's like seeing the world with fresh eyes, even if you've been there before.
It's about letting go of those preconceived notions,
Right.
assumptions,
Okay.
biases,
Right.
and being open to new experiences
Right.
and information that might challenge your existing perspectives.
It's like hitting the reset button
Exactly.
on our strategic thinking and approaching everything with a fresh, open mind.
And by cultivating this beginner's mind,
Right.
we're more likely to spot opportunities that we might have otherwise missed,
Right.
to adapt our strategies more effectively, and to make decisions that are aligned with our ever-changing world.
I love this idea.
Yeah.
I'm ready to embrace my inner strategic beginner
There you go.
and approach each day with a sense of wonder and a thirst for knowledge.
That's the spirit.
Okay.
Yeah. The journey of strategic mastery isn't about reaching some level of perfection.
Right.
It's about that continued progress.
Okay.
It's about constantly striving
Right.
to learn, grow, and adapt your thinking
Right.
to the evolving challenges of life.
This has been an incredible deep dive.
It has.
I feel like my strategic thinking has leveled up in ways that I never imagined.
I'm thrilled to hear that.
Yeah.
And remember, anyone can learn and apply these principles. They're not reserved for generals or CEOs
Right.
or historical figures.
Right, right. It's for anyone.
They're for anyone who wants to harness the power of strategic thinking.
It's like we're all potential strategic superheroes in training.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the world is our strategic playground.
Before we wrap up this epic strategic journey, did Greene leave us with any final wisdom?
He did.
Huh.
Any parting strategic advice to ponder?
Yeah.
And it's a question that I think perfectly encapsulates the essence of his talk.
Okay.
If warfare is the ultimate test of strategy,
Right.
how can you apply these principles to win in your own life?
Right.
Not through aggression,
Right.
but through smart,
Right.
adaptable,
Yeah.
and strategic thinking.
Okay.
So
There you go.
that is a powerful question.
It is. Yeah, it's like he's challenging us to take all this strategic knowledge
Right.
and actually put it into practice.
Exactly.
Exactly.
It's one thing to understand these principles,
Right.
but the real magic happens when you start applying them.
Right.
It's about integrating that strategic thinking into how you approach challenges
Right.
and pursue your goals.
So we've been given this amazing toolbox.
Yeah.
And now it's time to actually,
Right.
build something incredible with it.
And the best part is,
Yeah.
you get to decide what that incredible creation will be.
Yeah.
Maybe the thriving career,
Right.
a deeply fulfilling relationship,
Right.
a passion project that takes flight,
Right.
or simply a more empowered and strategic approach to navigating everyday life.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation.
Good. I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah, I feel equipped to become the strategic architect of my own life.
There you go.
Yeah. And we don't have to do it alone.
Yeah.
Right. There's this whole world of strategic wisdom out there.
Absolutely.
From the brilliant minds of history
Yeah.
to modern day thinkers.
And modern day thinkers, we can all learn from each other, share insights,
Right.
and support one another on this journey.
That's right. We're all in this together.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into military strategy and its relevance to our lives, I want to leave you with one final thought.
Okay.
Think about the battlefields
Right.
in your own life.
Yeah.
What challenges are you facing?
Right.
What goals are you striving for?
Yeah.
How can you apply these strategic principles
Right.
to approach those situations with more clarity,
Yeah.
creativity,
Yeah.
and confidence?
That's a great question to reflect on.
Remember, you have the power to become the strategic mastermind of your own life.
You do.
You can choose your battles wisely.
Yeah.
You can filter out the noise. You can learn from the past.
Right.
And you can create a future
Yeah.
that aligns with your values and your dreams.
Go out there and conquer, fellow strategists.
That's all for our deep dive today. Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, stay curious, stay strategic, and keep learning. It really has been a pleasure.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that stood out to me was this idea of strategic patience.
Yes.
It's not always about making that quick move.
No.
It's about sometimes waiting for the right opportunity.
Absolutely.
Assessing the situation.
Yeah.
And then striking when you have, the best possible chance of success.
It's about choosing your battles carefully, too.
Right, right.
Sometimes the most strategic move is to not engage at all, right?
Exactly.
To conserve your energy and your resources for those battles that truly matter.
Yeah, I think for me personally, that's a big takeaway.
Yeah.
Learning to kind of step back and not feel like I need to, react to everything immediately.
Right. It's about that detachment, that emotional control.
Yeah, and I think learning from history is huge.
Absolutely.
It's so easy to kind of get caught up in the day-to-day.
Yeah.
But when you take that step back and you look at the bigger patterns, the historical trends, it really gives you a different perspective on the challenges that we're facing today.
And it gives you a sense of almost like a roadmap in some ways.
Yeah.
Because you can see how others have navigated similar challenges in the past.
Yeah, it's like having a mentor.
Exactly.
From
history.
From history,
Yeah.
who can kind of guide you and give you advice based on their experiences.
I love that.
Yeah.
And it's accessible to all of us.
It is.
We can all pick up a book.
Yeah.
And learn from those who came before us.
And the beauty of it is, these lessons, these principles,
Yeah.
they're really timeless, They've been relevant for centuries.
Yeah.
And they'll continue to be relevant, for centuries to come.
And they apply to so many different aspects of life.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not just about warfare or business.
Right.
It's about relationships. It's about personal growth.
Right.
It's about any situation where you're trying to navigate complexity and achieve a goal.
I think that's a really important point to emphasize.
Yeah.
This isn't just about being like, a strategic mastermind in business or in war.
Yeah.
It's about living a more strategic life.
Absolutely.
In every sense of the word.
And it's about empowering yourself.
Right.
To make better decisions.
Right.
To achieve your goals.
Right.
And to live a life that's more aligned with your values.
This has been an incredible conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your insights.
It's been my pleasure.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
We hope you found it insightful, informative, and inspiring.
Absolutely.
And we'll see you next time for another deep dive.